My name is Dan McKemper. I'm the General Counsel for Keokuk Junction Railway Company, and I also represent about 17 other railroads affiliated with Keokuk Junction. In the past, I've been in-house General Counsel for a small manufacturing company and had a solo private practice, and I have been a lawyer with a 5-person small town general practice firm. So I've kind of been on both sides of the fence, but for most of the last 25 years I've been in the railroad industry.
Hi, I'm Michelle Ramsey, and I'm Associate General Counsel at Meredith Corporation. I've been there for a little over 8 years. Prior to my time at Meredith, I was a trial lawyer, commercial and employment litigation at the Duncan Green Brown and Langus firm for many years, and then a few firms before that in my first days as a lawyer, but transitioned from private practice commercial litigation to in-house media law.
I'm Anna Mundy, and I am counsel with Principal Financial Group. I've been there about 5 years now, and I handle litigation. Prior to that, I was at the Nymaster Law Firm, and a pretty general practice of civil defense work at Nymaster. And my practice at Principal, it's a lot more targeted into the various businesses at Principal. I had more general practice than private practice.
My name is Leila Akai, and I'm a corporate attorney for Shazam. I have been there only for 9 months. Prior to that, I had the pleasure of being outside counsel, a patent attorney for a number of years with a local law firm, then went in-house and was lead IP counsel for an ethanol producer, and then most recently I was at DuPont Pioneer as patent counsel. So my recent shift has added a lot of additional work and exploration than previously, but it can be done if you specialize, but it's still good in-house. So.
Okay, I've got a microphone on. My name is Craig Long, and I'm General Counsel for Community Choice Credit Union, which is based here down in Johnston. And I've been there about 10 years now. Prior to that, I spent some time with a nonprofit. I worked as an assistant state public defender. I worked with 2 different firms doing litigation. And, my job is very much a corporate generalist, but I still litigate on behalf of the credit union. It's kind of a one-man shop, very much. So I enjoy it. It's something new every day.
The first question for the panelists, you guys can answer, each of you or however you'd like. What are you looking for in a new in-house attorney?
Oh, first. You know, the reason I said I go first is because my path was, I think, very much similar to some of yours. But I did a lot of different things before I ended up in this position. And I think it was that variety of experiences, having done corporate work in private practice, having done insurance defense, having done plaintiff's work, having done criminal law in particular, I think was very helpful for me coming into my particular position. So when I'm looking for somebody that's going to make the transition, I'm looking for somebody with a broad base of experience. For my particular role, that's not going to be true in other corporations. Other corporations may want one particular experience. Anybody agree with that?
Yeah, I think in my experience, because my prior experience had been pretty narrow, and it was very narrow in litigation and trial work, and kind of narrow to employment law, which really couldn't be much further from media law and corporate law and drafting and reviewing contracts. And so really, I think what my boss, my general counsel, was looking for, and what I would look for now, is really more quality experience and ability to learn, and willingness and eagerness to learn. So, for example, when I interviewed for my position, I actually report to a lawyer who sits in New York, and I was interviewing by telephone with her, and she asked me to please provide, and she was pretty skeptical because of my background and what she was looking for, and she asked me to provide a writing sample of a contract that I had drafted, and I panicked. And I called my friend who had actually kind of turned me on to the position, and I said, Jim, what do I do? And this lawyer wants a contract that I've drafted, and I don't draft contracts. What do I do? And he kind of, made a bit of a joke, but it's quite true, I found. He said, first of all, Michelle, none of us has ever drafted a contract. We all borrow from previous contracts and other contracts, and we create what we need, but none of us has ever drafted a contract. And he said, second of all, she just wants to see, what you can do. And, so just find a good employment settlement agreement that you drafted and negotiated and redacted and give it to her. And I think that really, and I ended up getting the job, and we work very, very closely and well together now. And I think that, it was, in my experience, it was sort of my general abilities as a lawyer and my willingness and ability to learn new things rather than my particular experiences in the past.
So I will offer, coming from a large legal department at Principal, we've got somewhere between 55 to 60 lawyers here in Des Moines, and that's all the U.S. lawyers. And so people are specialized in various areas. But I know my direct boss will tell me, I'm looking more for a good quality lawyer as opposed to somebody that's had necessarily in-depth experience in what we're looking for. So, yes, I've done litigation, but I can recall when I interviewed, my position does a lot of real estate litigation. And I was asked by some of the real estate transactional lawyers when I interviewed, how much real estate experience have you had? Very little at iMaster, just because of trying to think of what cases I would have had that would have touched on that. My boss said, it's contract, right? You've done contract work, you've done contract litigation, that's all it is. So you need to have some, so for example, when we're hiring ERISA lawyers, you have to have some experience with ERISA. But I think Principal recognizes that nobody's going to have the in-depth experience coming in with all of Principal's products, and that there's going to be some on-the-job training. But at the end of the day, you want a good quality lawyer who's able to step in and be able to learn the business and pick that up.
From my perspective, it helps a great deal if you spend your spare time taking pictures of trains. But seriously, I am looking for someone who's got some interest and background in areas other than law, because and anything would work. I mean, if you take pictures of trains on the side, that's great, but anything in terms of business, in terms of other interests, professionally or non-professionally, whatever, because if you're an in-house counsel, you've got to be part of a team with people that are not lawyers. You deal with non-lawyers more than you deal with lawyers, and you deal with that team every day, at least in a small setting like I deal with, and I think some of the other folks here deal with. You're a lawyer, yes, but you're also a part of the executive team. And so you deal with accounting people and marketing people and operating people. And I did a contract yesterday, and I sent it down to my operating guy to say, am I accurately describing what goes on the ground? And he made a couple of changes. Because I'm not an operating guy. I probably know more than most lawyers, but I'm not the guy that's out there switching cars. And so you've got to start with the realization, or you're going to have trouble right off the bat, that you're part of a team with other disciplines.
I'll just second what everyone has said, actually. Having been in large, medium, and very small corporate divisions, Obviously, if there's a specialty such as my previous life as a patent attorney, that was key and that was the focus and that was the team that I was with, whether it was 40 of us or it was 5 of us. Once I expanded out of that role into broader roles within some of the companies I was in, it really is having a background that where you are a good quality lawyer and that skill set and that desire and letting that come across when you are going in and interviewing. No one expects you as in-house counsel to be an expert when you walk in. I don't know, I wasn't when I went to any of my positions. I think it's just that desire, having the background, obviously references, things of that nature, and being really interested in the company that you're going to is key, because as has been mentioned before, you are part of a team. It's not just going to be the attorneys, and you are going to be dealing with everyone in that company on a regular basis, more than you ever would as outside counsel. So you really need to have that passion for the company, the products, the vision, the goal, to really be able to do the best job possible.
Great, thank you guys. What should people that are newer to the practice of law, such as young lawyers, division members, know about the structure of in-house practice? Maybe touch on some of the differences between the small, medium, large size legal departments too.
I think that, I'll go ahead and start again. I think that's a good question because I know that when I left law school, I didn't really even understand what the phrase general counsel meant. I think I knew that I would like to work for a corporation, but that just wasn't something that happened right away. My situation is perhaps a little bit more unique in that I am the only lawyer within my organization. I am part of the executive team, but as the only lawyer I report to the CEO was not a lawyer. And so I have to be very mindful that some of the decisions that I make and some of the processes that I go through, he may not, at least in the beginning, he may not have understood why I was doing that. And so I had to go to great lengths to make sure that I made myself understood as things went forward, to the point of kind of exhaustively describe many things. 10 years later, we've, really in a great position where he understands where I'm coming from, and it works out quite well.
And I guess I can kind of speak to the medium-sized law department, probably medium-sized company. I'd say we're about 3,000 employees across the country, a little less than 1,000 of them in Des Moines, but we only have 6 in-house counsel for those 3,000 employees and for all of our operations. So our model and our general counsel really has a, I think, kind of unique approach to how to structure an in-house law department. He actually has the title general counsel, but he has given each of the lawyers under him also the title general counsel with a sort of with a tagline, so general counsel national media, general counsel local media, and we rely heavily on outside counsel as bench support. So I don't do any litigation in my job. I manage outside counsel who do litigation, but we also have several relationships with law firms here in New York, Boston, kind of all over the place, where we have lawyers with whom we've negotiated relatively favorable fee arrangements from our perspective, who really act as bench in-house counsel support for us. So they sort of know our business. They work directly with our business people like I would. They just copy me. And so we're able to service the whole company with a very small law department using that model of drawing on outside counsel support.
I would agree on the outside counsel. Again, is having experienced different sizes. Outside counsel is invaluable. Doesn't matter if you're with a large company, I would say, with a lot of counsel, we still utilize them in one way or another. And then the smaller that you are, more and more so, but always under the direction of the other attorney in-house. So it's helpful because of that connection that you have with your team, but also that, you're not doing it alone, because you are dealing with day-to-day business and they are assisting you to make sure that you can get that done. So it's definitely a difference, I think, with all different sizes, but it's also a constant that you'll find as well.
Yeah, one of the huge differences you'll find between law practice, law firm, and an in-house counsel is, as an in-house counsel, you're also managing other lawyers, what we call outhouse counsel. And that is frankly a difficult job. It's one that when you start out, you're not used to doing. And it's critical because they're handling, in many cases, the litigation or more complicated regulatory matters, or at least they're assisting you in those. And it's critical that you establish good long-term relationships with outside counsel, and that you're comfortable with outside counsel and that you can talk to outside counsel, because you're very much going to end up being the person in the middle, because the outside counsel is going to do what lawyers do, and your boss in the corporation is going to want to know why we're spending so much money on outhouse counsel, and what are they doing, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's a difficult relationship. Excuse me. That's a difficult relationship to manage, and it's one that you really have to get comfortable with and know what you're doing early, or you're going to look bad to both sides if you're getting hit on both sides. So that's a critical difference.
I would offer to the YLD members that just like you're hearing from on this panel, no in-house job is the same, just like no firm is the same. The structure can be vastly different. When you graduate law school, if you go right to a law firm, I can remember graduating, you don't know yet how kind of the economics of the firm works, and as an associate, you're not necessarily privy to all of that information. And the longer you're there, you start to learn a little bit more. It's the same thing if you're interviewing for in-house counsel position. You don't know how it's all working, behind the scenes. And structures can be very different. It can be, the value placed on in-house lawyers can be very different. At Principal, because we have a large legal team, we're doing a lot of the work for the businesses. Yes, when there's litigation against Principal, we are hiring outside counsel because we're not licensed in all the states. But if it's pre-litigation, not to litigation yet, I'm handling that. And it's a decision I have to make. Can we do this in-house, or do we need to get outside counsel on this to assist? And because we have the resources at Principal, the business is going to expect, what are you, my lawyer, who works for Principal, doing? That's a large law firm, or a large corporation and large legal team. But if you're a one-man shop or a really small legal department, it's not going to be possible to do all that work. But it's really important from the in-house position to be able to show the business what your value is. And I think that's what Craig was speaking to, how he had to kind of work with his boss to explain to a non-lawyer what value he was providing to his company. Because, a law firm, your value is known. I mean, it's the economics. It's what you're bringing in, right? It's what dollars are coming in off of the work you're doing. You don't have the same thing in an in-house position. So you've got to show the business people what value you are bringing to them. Because otherwise...
Well, very often you're looked at as nothing but a cost center.
Exactly. The law department doesn't bring, I was just going to say that, the law department is not a profit center. They're not bringing money in.
And so here's a perfect example. I work with our CFO a great deal. Well, our CFO carries a couple of professional licenses as well. And he's not expected to make a profit. Am I expected to make a profit? And yeah, at one time I was, before I got that point across, that, no, that's not exactly how this works. So.
And that's something that I'll kind of chime in on, a little less economic, although the economics are very real, and it's very difficult. In fact, I struggled. I'm a member of a trade association that we do in-house counsel share groups, and we get a bunch of in-house counsel together and mostly complain about our business people. But we also talk about kind of what problems we encounter and how we handle them. And one of the things that we often talk about is how do you quantify that value, and how do you, because you don't have the billables, and you don't have what all of the other parts of the business have. You don't have a P&L, you don't have a profit and loss statement that says, and I don't have, when I do my goals for my annual review, my performance goals, it's whatever needs to be done, to be a service to the company, and whereas almost all of the other business units they have financial goals. They have, they need to bring in this much revenue and cut costs by this much, and so it's really unique. But the other thing is that you're often looked at least in our law department, and I think many others, as kind of the business killers. So not only are you a cost center, but you're also the people that slow down or stop progress in the business. So that's a challenge that you have to really, and it kind of comes with the teamwork aspect, working with a team and showing the team your value. You have to show them that what you're doing is not trying to slow them down or stop them from making money, but trying to help them make money by structuring things in a way that they're the most efficient and the least likely to cause litigation or problems.
I had that conversation yesterday where one of our younger senior management team members said, "We're trying to make money here." And I said, "I'm trying to save you money by not costing you $1 million in courtroom. Do you understand? I have to have, in particular, because I'm a sole practitioner within the corporation, pretty thick skin. And I really have to stand my ground on a lot of those things. And you do get the nickname on occasion, Dr. No. You have to be, I'm glad you brought that up, you really have to be aware of that at all times and be able to compromise and work towards favorable solutions, not just be Dr. No.
Anyone else have other examples of whether it was a challenge or a success of kind of getting the company that you work for to have buy into what you or your legal department, your goals or your worth to the company?
I think in my case, and in other cases in which, and I should mention that I was the first in-house counsel for my employer. In fact, I think I was the first credit union in-house attorney in the state. I think there's 3 now, possibly 4. I think that they realized rather quickly simply the accessibility of having me being there, being accessible, knowing what, because I'm salaried, knowing what that payout is going to be every year, as opposed to the uncertainty that they were experiencing as non-lawyers, trying to hire lawyers to handle a lot of their work. They had a lot of uncertainty in that. I think they sort of bet up into that right away.
I have the benefit in my department of having a really strong general counsel who's going to support us. She's been in that position a long time, and she gives us a lot of leeway and support and will back us up in decisions we make. And that's really important, because I know if the business comes to her or to other management to question something I've helped advise on or given a recommendation on, that I'm going to have that support behind me. And I've had friends in some in-house positions who didn't have that, because the person that they reported to either wasn't a lawyer and didn't get that, didn't understand it, or was a lawyer and had so much pressure on them from the business to give the business what they wanted, versus backing up the in-house lawyer who's telling them, this is a really bad idea and I don't recommend this because. And you've got to be able to support that and lay it out for the business. But having that support, I think, is really important.
And I would definitely echo the accessibility benefit, and I think I've always said I did it as outside counsel too, but I always strive to be super ultra responsive, and some others in my department aren't quite as much, which I get a lot of their calls, like, this person's not responding to me and I really need to know. But really that, and building those relationships so that, you know, the business people come to know and trust you. If you establish that you're not Dr. No from the beginning, that you really are, that your bonus is based on the revenue of the company as well, and you know that you really want the company to make money too, and you want to do it mindfully, and you work together, you really start to build relationships in-house. And I would say, and I don't know if this is responsive to a different question, it's a little bit off topic, but I found it super important. When I was in private practice, I didn't really understand the importance of it so much until I came in-house, but really the importance of getting to know your client, both them personally and their business. And I had a wonderful mentor when I was in private practice. We were doing some litigation together. He'd been a trial lawyer for a million years, and we were doing some litigation for a client way up in Northeast Iowa, and it's a manufacturing sort of client. And it was employment litigation over a benefits thing, and he scheduled a meeting and said, we're going up to the plant, and we're going to spend the day there, and we're going to tour the operations, and we're going to meet with the HR director and the CFO and several other people. And I thought, why in the world are we spending, and we comped this all with the client, I mean, it wasn't billable time. And I thought, why in the world are we spending a whole day traveling to Northeast Iowa to tour this manufacturing plant when it's employment litigation, and the facts we need we can get by email from the HR director. And now, being in-house and looking back on that, I see exactly what the value of that was, and it was getting to know our client and what they do and understanding the business, because if you understand what the goal is, what the client's trying to get done, and how their operations work, you can give so much better advice, whether you're outside or inside, than when you're sort of doing it in a vacuum and just writing a memo about all the reasons why this isn't a good idea. Because the business people, a lot of times, they have to do it. I mean, like, the question is not, can we do this? The question is, how can we do this with the least risk and exposure and with the most benefit and profit? So really learning to be a team member from the get-go really goes a long way to show your value as a business.
You got to get off your phone and get out of your office. I'm very capable of doing that because my employer, most of our operations are in the metro area. If I have a branch manager that has a significant problem, I will get in my car and I'll drive over there. And I will make it a point to meet everybody else in that office while I'm there. It's a small organization. I'm able to do that. You can't always do that. But even among larger legal department, I think it helps. Don't call them or email them. Walk down there. A couple floors down, walk down there. Take the elevator. Go visit them face-to-face. They'll learn a lot. You'll get to know them better, and you'll provide better service, for sure.
I would echo what Craig and Michelle just said in terms of critical that you establish relationships with those folks that you're writing contracts for or dealing with in whatever way, the marketing people, the operating people, the various other departments that you deal with. You got to establish relationships with those people, and you have personal relationships, maybe you go to lunch with them or what have you, so that you can really talk to them on a basis that they trust you, and if it comes down to a critical element, you may say, hey, this is what we're talking about, this is what could happen if we do this versus this, and if you want to take that chance, you go to the CEO and get him to approve it, you take the risk. But, you've got to establish that relationship of credibility, of being able to talk honestly with those folks so that they don't think you have, either the Dr. No agenda or some other agenda that you're pushing, rather than, we're trying to do, what you want here to get this deal through, or whatever it is that you're working with them on. And so those personal relationships are critical.
I would echo as well. I think Michelle mentioned accessibility. A big difference that I experienced through private practice versus in-house is being accessible, and there's an expectation that you're accessible. I mean, obviously, outside counsel may not get as many emails in the middle of the night from somebody because they don't want to get billed for it. As in-house counsel, you probably will, and I have. Get a call from the president at 6 o'clock in the morning saying, we have an issue, da-da-da-da-da. And being receptive to that, being open to that, being willing to drop everything and take whatever that fire is at that particular moment or whatever that main concern is important in creating and fostering those relationships, as well as just letting them know you're there for the team, you're there to support, give the best advice that you can, work through the issue. But just know that as in-house counsel, that accessibility is very key. It's also different than it is in private practice, and sometimes it can be demanding, but it's necessary, and it's necessary to be able to foster those relationships, to be able to do the best job that you can for your company.
But it may not always be a legal issue.
Correct.
You may get a call at 6 in the morning for something that's business related. That's when you have to shift rules. You have to now be a business partner and help them through that. You can't say, well, hey, that's not really a legal issue. That's not going to get you anywhere.
You can start with that. I usually start with, that's not really a legal issue, but. So they just know that, like you really need to make this call because it's a business decision, but I'm here to help and support.
And there are privilege considerations you have to, when having that conversation, taking the role as a business owner, apart from your legal side. So you have to keep all that in mind, but that's a different conversation, I think.
Kind of switching gears a little bit, both for people who are maybe newer to in-house roles or who are interested in applying for or pursuing one in the future, what kind of tools are out there that you found are helpful? Are there associations, networking opportunities, these sort of practice forms or templates, anything along those lines, or anything we haven't mentioned?
Well, I think back in the 30s when I could still be a member of the Lawyers Division, I've aged out by a little bit. I so much enjoyed the activities with both the Polk County and the ISDA. I had a great time, just fantastic. I'm still a member of both. I don't know a lot of corporate attorneys that are, but I suspect it's probably more than I know. Once I went in-house, there's another bar association that I had never heard of, and I had a judge here in town recommend that I look into it, called the Association of Corporate Counsel. And that bar association is specifically directed towards the needs of an in-house attorney. An absolutely amazing amount of materials, examples, training, specialized training, everything that you could imagine. The Iowa State Bar Association, however, also has a corporate section that I've been involved with, which is also very helpful. And that's been very helpful because that is not, you have to, for the Association of Corporate Counsel, you must be an in-house attorney to be a member. The ISBA, that's not true. So here we've got outside counsel. Some people that I use are also on the committee, and I'm on the committee. And it's a great, it's a great way to get to know each other and kind of promote our great art in the state.
I would agree. Lots of different associations, be it local or larger, such as ACC. I think it's important if you do have, especially obviously I'm coming from a different perspective as being a patent attorney for 15 years. I'm still very actively involved in all of the national organizations I was involved in prior to going in-house, and have been able to utilize that networking not only then in my corporate counsel positions and with organizations such as ACC, but it's enabled me to have a network of people to call on, and people that I say, this is what I'm looking for. Do you know a resource? Do you know a person? And with everybody's knowledge and experiences, being able to have that to go to. I think the associations, no matter which ones you choose, it's important to get involved. It's invaluable, the people that you meet, the friendships that you foster, the business relationships that you foster. And there's some that I think are excellent, the CLEs are excellent, and it's definitely worth that time and effort. And I know there's some that I've been a part of since before I was even practicing when I was a law student, And I have friendships that have been there for a very long time, decades, that I wouldn't trade for anything, but I know I can call them and say, I need a new outside counsel, or I need a template for this. And it's a great way to build your community of legal colleagues and friends, which is invaluable in making your job just that much more fun.
I am very much involved in the trade association, the American Short Line and Regional Railroad Association, and I suspect that most every industry has some trade association, so I urge you to become involved in those associations. I'm on the General Counsel Committee of the Short Line Association. I assume there's similar organizations and other trade associations, but just to go to the events that the trade association has, learn the business, learn people in the business, get to know those folks and what's going on in the industry. And, there's talk about, what problems they may have. That may be what hits your desk 2 weeks later, and, you've got a little heads up on it. And most instances you can call folks and, they'll help you out. So I would urge you to be involved with not just the legal, per se, bar associations, but also with your company's trade associations.
I would definitely echo that. I am on the board of advisors for the Brand Activation Association, which is it's a division of the Association of National Advertisers, which is a huge national marketing and advertising organization. And get actively involved. Really, don't just go to the CLEs, because that's fine, or their big conferences, but also seek out those opportunities. Like, they were thrilled to have me, and I was thrilled to have the opportunity to be on their board of advisors and go and meet twice a year or 4 times a year with the other members of the organization on kind of the direction of the organization and really getting involved. But I think the best resource that I had in transitioning from outside counsel to in-house was my relationships with my colleagues and my clients. So I think a lot of in-house lawyers, their path to in-house is through a client. Their client ends up their employer. So you have a client who's using you as outside counsel, and you develop and foster that relationship with them. They come to trust and rely on you, and when they need someone in-house, or even when they decide, I'm tired of paying for this person to be outside, maybe I'll add somebody in-house, they end up transitioning in-house with the client. My experience was a little different than that, in that I had a partner in my law firm who I did a lot of work with, worked really closely with, developed a good sort of mentoring relationship with him. He left the law firm, went to another law firm, and had Meredith as a client. And at his law firm at the time, they had an associate who was doing a whole bunch of work, that bench support work that I was talking about for Meredith. And he was on a partnership track, and because of those very favorable fee arrangements that we set up with the outside counsel, he needed to be billing more dollars in the door to stay on that partnership track. And my former partner, who knew me well and knew my work, even though I had no media experience and no in-house experience at all, called me and said, hey, this guy needs to transition out of this. I think this would be a great opportunity. And I actually ended up going to that law firm initially for about 6 months for what I now know, although nobody has admitted it, was like a trial period. But went to work there for 6 months as outside counsel for Meredith, almost exclusively, and then was offered the in-house position about 6 months later. So I'd say relationships, both with clients and colleagues, are huge. Both, if you're new to practicing law, if you're old to practicing law, in either, either scenario, those are really important.
And they write books about that trial period. The first 90 days, You know, that's kind of what the business acumen, that's what they call it. Very important.
With the experience that you all have now, what advice would you give yourselves as attorneys in the first 5 years of practice?
Oh, boy. How long were we at?
18 minutes.
Okay, all right. I think I can do better. You know, I'm still very surprised where I'm at this point. This is something that I did not expect. I took all the corporate classes. I took all the secure transactions classes. I took all those. That's where my main interest was. But when I got out of school, I mean, my career took a completely different path that I had never anticipated. And I still look kind of back on my career so far with a little bewilderment. A lot of people ask me, you know, how'd you do it? Wow, I don't know. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
You know, I didn't necessarily choose this route. A lot of it just happened. And I'd like to think I made some great decisions along the way, and I think I did. But it certainly wasn't completely planned out. So I think you got to be comfortable with that.
I think the best advice that I can give is really, even if you're outside counsel and you're doing litigation work or advising on employment matters or anything, what I now see that I didn't see in those first 5 years of practice was that you need to be that business partner even when you're the outside lawyer. There's a real tendency to want to do these thorough 10-page memos about all of the reasons why this, you know, you shouldn't do this or you can't do this, or you know, and with lots of cites and case law, and what, you know, what your client needs is some really good practical advice. And as an outside lawyer, you can't make the business decisions. You do have to, you know, like, protect yourself and your malpractice carrier, and you know, like, but you know, really being that business partner to your client, whether you're outside or inside, and, you know, like, paring it down a little bit and getting, you know, and getting to the point, and being efficient and effective partners. I think it's the part that, like, I didn't really see until I got the first one of those 10-page memos from one of my outside counsel when I was inside, and I'm like, where, like, and there's never an answer in all 10 pages. You never told me what I need to know, like, to figure out how to go forward with this project. So, like, you know, it's something that I wish I would have learned earlier, to really, really focus on what, like, and that goes back also to what I said about really getting to know your client's business, again, whether you're outside or inside, so that you understand what the end goal is. I mean, I gave some employment advice. Well, you know, just do this and implement this big drug testing program and do this and this and this, and it's like, we can't just do that. We're small. We don't have the resources to do that, and we don't have, you know, like, and to understand that, and, you know, and be able to give mindful advice to your client is, I think, invaluable.
It took my boss 6 months to get enough nerve to tell me to quit writing those 10-page memos. And when he did, he finally just lost it one day. And honestly, I think I was because I didn't like writing them. So,
I've realized I can't do the job I do today had I not had the experience in the first 5 years. So you've got to take everything that comes your way. You know, whether it be something you think, I don't know if I'm interested in this, try it. You never know. Craig is so right. You don't know where things are going to take you. I went to lunch with a friend, and she'd been a principal and said, and when she got hired at principal, they hadn't hired somebody in litigation in a long time. And so I wasn't thinking, I went to lunch with her as a friend. It had nothing to do with whether I thought I worked there. And she said, would you ever leave? I think we might have known. Maybe. I know you're happy. Maybe. It just came about that way. And you never be able to prepare or plan for that. You know, you don't know where your career is going to take you. But get that wide breadth of experience so that you're prepared for that. And that is so true what you were talking about, Michelle, about knowing what your client is going to need. I just had experience of jumping into a case in the middle of trial, of learning what it is. Yes, that's not pleasant. And I asked my paralegal, send me all, what has outside counsel given us, the pretrial report. Give me all the correspondence in the last 6 months that you've received of what is this, what's going on. And I looked at it and went, whoa, this is really unclear. Where's the pretrial report that lays out what the issues are? Where's the recommendations? Like, it just simply didn't exist. And the guy's been an insurance defense lawyer practicing for 30 years. And it was a lesson to me of, wow, communication. Get to the point, tell the client what they need to know about the case. And make that clear, that, again, it's just a lesson. It doesn't matter how well you're practicing. It doesn't necessarily mean you're doing a good job of what the client needs.
The more you can predict that, the more successful you can be ultimately, both in-house and as outside counsel.
Yeah, I would offer two things. First of all, to echo that, the one thing that I learned rather quickly, if you write 10-page memos, or if you write 3-page memos, or if you write 2-page memos, they're all too long. The average attention span for your CEO is maybe a paragraph on a good day. He wants you to get down to the nub of the argument. He doesn't want to read 3 pages, let alone 10. So that I learned rather quickly. But the other thing is, as an outside counsel, most of the time you're going to be dealing with 1, maybe 2 folks from the corporation or whatever the business entity is. And I think you get into the mindset that the corporation is the corporation. It's a monolith. And when you actually work inside, you find out it isn't like that at all. And this is taken some time for me to adjust, and I still, from time to time, have to remind myself, the interests of the marketing department and the operating department aren't always the same. And the perspective of the IT department and the operating department aren't always the same. And of course, everyone has a different view than the accounting department. So we have that internal dynamic, and I think that's true of most, if not all, organizations. Not everyone is on the same page, and so you've got to navigate those shoals, so to speak, and because obviously you've got to work for all of them. And if you don't realize that there is that conflict there between what one department wants and what another department wants, you're going to be in trouble, because it's not a monolith. There are internal interests that you've got to try to harmonize in what you're doing, and not get one side, if you will, one department mad at you because, well, you always take their side against us, and yada, yada, yada. So that's something that takes some considerable amount of time to do.
If you can make it work, it's awesome. I mean, I love it when everything's moving forward, the objectives of the company as a team is moving forward. I love it. It's great.
I would echo what all of my colleagues have said, and the first 5 years of my legal career, I would never have expected that I would be where I am today. But I have to say that I love every minute of it. So, do get that varied background, take chances. I mean, I was a patent attorney. I was going to write patents for the rest of my life. Got some wonderful opportunities to expand on that, to get out of prosecution, to do contracts and negotiations, mergers and acquisitions. Loved every bit of it, and every step that has gone along the way has gotten me into different positions where it's broadened my horizons, my experiences, and the joy I have for the legal practice too. So don't be afraid to take those chances. There might be some you take and you say, well, let's move back to this or on to that, and that's okay. Those first 5 years I was so set on one path, and thankfully I had amazing mentors that gave me that exposure early on. That has now brought me to a place that I would never imagine that I wouldn't change it at all. So remember to have fun. I mean, it's draining, it can be exhausting, we work hard hours, we deal with a lot of things that some days you just shake your head saying, I cannot believe I'm dealing with this today. But remember to enjoy why you became a lawyer and lean on your colleagues and friends that are as well, because we've all been there. We've all experienced it and can definitely be there to support and rally. So have fun with it.
When I clerked for a big firm in town, fantastic folks. But one of the guys I worked with on a defense case involving a bank, he would just badmouth the in-house attorneys for this financial institution, just so lazy, they don't work, they don't do anything. Honestly, I can tell you for sure, the stress level from being in private practice to now is the same. It's just different. It's a different type of stress. And I've always remembered that. I can hear him saying it to this point. Bankers' hours and everything else. Right. Don't believe it. Don't believe it.
It's funny, it is a different kind of stress and a different, I remember lamenting in private practice, I kept putting vacations on my calendar and then kept having to take them back off because I didn't notice that there was a hearing, or one of my senior partners was going to Emoji for the summer, in the summer, and I had to handle his hearing, or and I just kept it every time I put vacation on my calendar, I had to cross it off. And now I have a lot more work-life balance, I think, in my position in-house. I keep much more regular hours in the office. And I travel, but I only travel sort of on a scheduled basis. It's scheduled ahead of time. I can plan when I'm going out to the New York offices, and a lot of times I travel on the corporate jet, which isn't bad either. But it's very much more planned and structured that way from a scheduling perspective. I don't have hearing notices coming in and the summary judgment deadline this day. And, my outside counsel have those, which I'm thankful now that I don't. But it's a different kind of stress, and it is responding to the email. I do a lot of sweepstakes and contest work, which is kind of unique.
Yes.
Like we just had a sweepstakes that we have a vendor handling for us, but the client doesn't really know that it's a vendor handling it, and the vendor screwed it all up, and and you get a call, like, what do we do? Like this thing, at 7 o'clock at night, you get the email, and we need to respond to the client right now, and and most of the time it's those business questions. They really aren't legal questions. It's it's already screwed up. The legal part was good on the front end. It just didn't really go, get executed the way that it was supposed to. But it is sort of that kind of stress. It's sort of the being in the middle of trying to help the business and where they are and when they are and when the problems arise. But I have found, if you're interested in going in-house, at least in my experience, the schedule is much easier to keep than a litigation trial schedule.
I agree.
And at least in my practice, and I think in most, maybe some large corporations are different, but you don't have to keep your time.
Yes, amen.
Which was a wonderful change for me, is it was always irritating, especially when we first started the computer time system, and I'm not a computer person, but yeah.
Some do. Some in-house counsel do.
Yeah, I'm going to say, large ones may, but I don't think most do.
In fact, it's important for someone, like I got a good buddy in New York that works for Xerox, and he actually has to charge the departments, and they have to pay in to the law department. It comes out of their budget.
Bean counter nonsense.
I agree
but it
with
happens.
the principle, but it's not to the 10th of an hour, nowhere close to that. So it's not the same type of tracking. It's, okay, looking at my calendar, what did I do at the end of the week, and very general allocations.
Yeah.
That takes 5 minutes, not how many hours go into getting your billing right.